A key concept in programming is the idea of a loop. So a loop is a way of repeating a set of instructions until a specified condition basically happens. So we've encountered conditions in if statements where it can sort of determine if something is true or false. These loops, we're going to have that condition sort of repeat over and over and carry out a section of code until that condition becomes false. There are two main types, while and for loops. There are a few others as well. But while something is true, do this. For is generally used for counting through when you know a set number of times the loop needs to run. While loops often used when you don't know how often the loop needs to execute or run. So really useful concepts. It allows us to sort of get a bit more sort of interaction, repeating things. Really good for maybe like we looked at earlier, going through all the items or elements in a list or an array. So we enter the program. It asks the stop condition, are you full? No. Are we hungry? We're hungry, yes. We eat. It asks us again, are we full? No. Keep going round and round until we're full. Goes yes, and then goes off onto the next section of code. So let's look at how we can actually get that running in code. So we could have, vacation spots, have a list of like 3 different strings, all the different places. So let's go like before, variable called vacation spots. So we're starting to actually pull the stuff together. We're going to make an array of 3 places. So I want to go to Greece, where's it? Croatia, and Sweden. So 3 different vacation spots stored in an array. Now I'm going to log each item. So remember console.log. Now to access them, the name of the array and its index. So I've got index 0 there. Copy and paste this. 1 and 2, so it's printed out Croatia, Greece, Croatia and Sweden. Now, not bad if you only got 3. Imagine you got 50 or 100. Going to be pretty tedious and really annoying. So we're going to actually get a for loop to actually carry out this next task. So let's have a look at what we need to do for that. So we're just going to jump onto that. So we run that again. Doesn't really work. So we're just going to look at what's called the for loop. So for, let's say, every item in the list, carry out a task. So it's got the variable that's actually declared or created when you create the for loop. It's called an iterator. So it iterates. Loop goes over each part of the loop. So you can set a starting value. So we might start at index 0. And it'll keep going until we get to maybe like the end of the list. So a for loop has 3 sections in it, or 3 expressions, and they've got a semicolon to separate them inside the parentheses. So initialization is the first section, so it sets it up. And then stopping condition, so that's like in the if statement, so when do you want the loop to stop? And then the final section is the iteration statement, so update the iterator, so change it to something else. So we've got our for loop, so we've got our initialization, so we're setting a counter to be starting at 0. As long as the counter is less than 4, do the stuff inside the curly brackets, the loop. When you finish the stuff inside the curly brackets, do this section of the code, which is going to add 1 onto the counter. So counter becomes 1, then counter becomes 2, then counter becomes 3, counter becomes 4, counter is now not less than 4, so it finishes. Okay, so this would actually print at 0, 1, 2, 3, but it won't print 4 because that becomes false and the code jumps down to after the for loop. So as mentioned, we've got an initialization, the stopping condition, as long as counter is less than 4. So when counter is 4, it stops. Iteration statement, add 1 onto the counter after that code block. So let's have a look. So loops from 5 to 10 and logs the number to the console. So let's have a look at what we've got. So we're going to have 4. Let counter equal, what's our starting condition? We want to start at 5. While counter is less than or equal to, actually let's just do less than 10, counter plus plus, and we want to log that number. Oh, so it's only printed out the first 9. So I want to go one more, so I want to do less than or equal to. So it's included that number 10. So this is where particularly less than equal tos, and so on become really, really important. And we can actually go in reverse. So we want to go back 4, 3, 2, 1. So we want to make a for loop that loops backwards, printing 3 to 0. So we want to go while counter is greater than or equal to 0, but we don't want to start at there. We want to start at, let's say, 3 and do a counter minus minus, which moves in the reverse order. So really good for going through arrays as well, because remember, arrays are just indexes. Position 0, position 1, position 2. So we can have a counter that starts at 0 and go to the end of the array. And remember, we've got a .length function, so you can get how many items are in an array. So this example here, we'll go through all of the items in that array. So it'll print out grizzly bear on one line, then sloth, then sea lion. So really, really useful. So let's have a look at how we go with this. We've got a for loop, iterates through our vacation spots array using I as the iterator. So we're going to have, instead of counter, we're going to have I. It's just short for iterator. And for loop use console.log to each position them, write it with I would love to visit after each one. So let's have a try that. So for let I be 0, well I is less than vacation spots dot length I plus plus. And what we now want to do is write out stuff to the screen. So console.log, and we can go I would love to visit, and vacation spots bracket I, so we'll get that index position. And let's see, I would love to visit Bali, and so on. Now I'm going to modify this one so that we use that inline iterator. So remember, we can use the $, curly bracket, and close that curly bracket, and it does the same thing. So remember, we can use that interpolated string. Nested loops. Oh, these are great, but they will do your head in. Essentially, it is a loop inside another loop. So we've got two arrays, my array and your array. So my array is in what's called the outer loop, and your array is what's called inside the inner loop. And this program is going to go through and check to see are there any numbers that match up. So it starts at position 0 of my array, which is 6. Okay, so we've got 6. Now it goes and jumps up to this part of the code. It gets your array. Note we've actually got to have a different iterator than here. It gets the first element of yours, which is 19. It checks if 6, that position in the first position of my array, and then that current position of your array, match. No, they don't, because 6 is not equal to 19. It still keeps 6, because I've just looped out of this array, and I'm back to your array and continuing through. I've now Got 81. Do they match? Does 81 equal 6? No. Does 2 equal 6? No. I've now finished going through all this array, so it gets to here. It finishes that one. It goes back to my array. It gets position 1, 19. It gets the first position of your array again, which is also 19. So my array here is 19, your array J. So I, position 1 is 19, your array position 0 is 19, and it prints out both loops have the number and then what that number is. So it's a way of actually finding a match. It's not the most efficient, but it works. So let's have a look at this task. So we're a massive programmer, yeah, I can imagine that. Social media, and we've got to find mutual followers, so people that have same people in their friends lists. And from the two mock users, the names of the followers who are on both. So we've got two arrays of friends. So we've got a variable called Bob's followers. So let's make a variable called Bob's followers. And we've got 4 strings with the name of Bob's friends. So we've got James, Nancy, Quinn, and Ashley. Oh, and that wanted to be called Bob's followers. So let's modify that. And we've got, now want Tina's followers. Be equal to, okay. Now we want to have 2 of these being the same. So Tina is actually going to be friends with Bob. And we're going to have Ashley and James and Steve. So we've got 2 of them that match up, Ashley and James. So it's index 3 in this list, and index 1 in this list, and index 0 in this list, and index 2 in this second list. Oh, it says actually only wants 3 items. She hasn't got as many friends. That's not very nice. And third variable called mutual followers. So this is going to store the ones that match up. And set it to an empty array, so we've got the square brackets with nothing in it. Now we're going to have a nested loop that goes through Bob's followers for the outer loop and Tina's for the inner loop. So for this gets quite complicated, I am going to call this let outer equal 0, and while outer is less than Bob's followers, so I've got one that's nice and sort of clear for Bob's followers there, and I want one for that inner. Now what you notice is I'm using quite clear variable names, just to make it easier to keep track of everything. Okay, so we've got both of those sort of set up and sorted. This is not that nicely written, so let's just move that around a little bit. Okay, so that's indented, and yeah, that one should go to there. Okay, so that's a bit easier to read. Now we need if the current element from the outer loop, so if the outer loop is Bob's followers, and the current element is what's stored in the outer, is equal to the current element from the inner loop so if they match, So I'm going to add a comment here. So we've got a match. We're going to add them to the mutual followers. Dot push this element on, and we're just going to do, we can either use it to either of them. Bob's followers, doesn't matter which, if we use Bob's followers or Tina's followers, just make sure you use the right iterator for each one. Okay, so let's have a look at what we've got here. Let outer equals 0. Oops, I forgot the keyword let. Cool. And actually, let's actually log that out to the screen so we can actually see the mutual followers. So we can see James and Ashley were both found. Okay, so for loops, really good for iterating over entire arrays. While loops are also really useful, but when we don't know how many times we need to actually loop through something. You can use them in the same way as a for loop, but they just require a few extra steps. So if we look at this example, so remember the for loop, it has our 3 sections. So setting up the iterator, the condition, and then what happens after the block statement. So while loop can do the same thing, but we've got to declare it before the while loop. We just have the one argument in the condition, and then the last line, or usually the last line, or somewhere inside that actual block statement, is that incrementer, the part that modifies that counter, or the iterator. So it works in a very similar way. Now, if we didn't have this counter here, it would always be in what's called an infinite loop, because counter 2 is basically stored as 1. 1 is less than 4, does this, doesn't change it if that line wasn't here. 2 then is 1 less than 4, 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 yep, and it just keeps going over and over. So it would be stuck in an infinite loop. So below the cards array, so we're going to look on line 4, declare a variable called current card. And we're not assigning it a value. Awesome. We're going to have a while loop. Well, current card is not equal to a spade. We want to do something. Okay, so it's given us this line of code, so let's have a look at what's actually happening. Current card math.floor. Think back to when we use some of these functions. Floor, round down essentially. Math.random times 4. So remember, generates a number between 0 and 4, or 0 and 1, math.random, times it by 4, so we've got a number between 0 and 4. So 0, 1, 2, 3 is what it's going to get, because it's rounding it down. So we've got our 4 different card types, basically. So we're going to set current card, assigned to cards. So math.floor, so math.random times 4. So that's going to generate a number, and it's going to get 0, 1, 2, or 3. Okay, and we'll keep going through until we get a spade. Oh, really picky about spelling. Cool. Now we have, so we're not actually seeing anything. So we're going to add the statement to actually print out what's going on. So we're adding a console.log to our while block, and we're going to print out the current card. So we're going to be able to see how many times it picks something different. So cool, picked diamond, heart, then a spade. If we run that again, it should get diamond and spade. Diamond, club, spade. Got a spade the first time, spade the first time. So you can see it's randomly choosing these different things. Okay, do while is similar to a while loop, except it runs all the code inside the curly brackets once before doing that check. So counts the strings, sets it up, it does this code, and then after it finishes it checks. So it's always going to actually run that section of code once. So it works, modifies the incrementer before it does the actual check. So while loop is used in a situation where sometimes it might never actually run. Do while loop is always going to run at least one time. So we're going to make a program that simulates cake baking. And the recipe, different numbers of sugars. Create the variable cups of sugar needed and assign it a value of your choosing. Cups of sugar must be added to the batter one at a time. Declare the variable cups added and assign it the value 0. So we're going to have a variable called cups of sugar needed. And we're going to give it, let's say, 5. And cups added is going to be 0 because we haven't actually got any cups at this point added. Oh, it wanted a capital there. I should be adding comments to each of these bits of code. Now we've got a sweet tooth. We want to add at least 1. So we're going to use a do while. So we're always going to make sure we add the code first. So do, and while, I'm going to just finish off the main sort of logic. While cups added is less than cups of sugar needed. So while this number is less than this number, keep doing this. So we're always going to run it. So let's add at least 1, and we want to increment cups added. So we can do it that way, or we could do a lot of different ways to get the same thing. Cool. So it's always going to add at least 1 cup of sugar. Even if I put 0, so let's actually log that out. So if you see this one, it's printed 5. Even if I change this down to being 0, because cups of sugar needed, it's always going to actually run this section once. If it was a while loop, it wouldn't actually even run it that one time. Okay, break. We've looked at the break keyword when we use the switch. It means sort of stop this loop, jump out of it. So if we find what we're looking for, so it's often used when we're searching for items, we break, we stop this loop. So let I equal to 0, I is less than 99. As soon as I is greater than 2, break, we're going to stop. Otherwise, it's going to write the word banana. Okay, so it goes 0, 1, 2, and then the next one 3, and once it gets to 3, 3 is greater than 2, it prints it out. So let's have a look at what we've got. So log each element in a for loop with the iterator I. So let's have a look. So we're going to have a for loop, The I is assigned to 0 because when we're going through arrays, we generally always start at index 0. Well, I is less than wrapper array dot length I plus plus, and we've got our arrays. So we're going to log it. Console.log, and I just want wrapper array bracket I. So print out whatever's at that current index. So we get Lil Kim, Jay-Z, Biggie, and Tupac. So after the for loop, log the string, and if you don't know, you know. Now you know. So we're going to log the string. So now you know. Remember, if you've used a single quote at the start, you're going to need to use the escape character there. Add a break inside your loop that breaks out of the loop if the current index is notorious BIG. So we need to work out matching up that one. So if wrapper array bracket I is equal to notorious BIG, we're going to break out of the loop. So it's gone through, got to notorious BIG, and then stopped. Actually, this one hasn't worked. So wrapper array helps if I actually spell this correctly, because it didn't actually match up. So it's done 1, 2, 3, notorious BIG, because it matched up those. The first time I did that, it didn't actually match because there was no matching words. So loops, going through things over and over, they're repetitive, and we write them in nested loops or loops inside loops. While we can have different stopping conditions. Do while runs it at least once. Break means we can actually stop running that loop.